This video is sponsored by Fake Idris Elba.
Bitch, I'm Idris Elba. I'm Idris Elba.
Before we start, I'm trying to grow my Instagram audience, so give me a follow on Insta, will ya? The pics are mid, but I tag every post with the gear it was taken with, so that you can compare camera output. Links in the description. Cheers! As we saw in our review of the Fujifilm X-Half, despite the decently sized 1-inch sensor inside, the image quality doesn't really hold up. I have a feeling that even the original Sony ZV-1 from 2020, which most likely shares the same sensor, is way better than the X-Half, so I'm gonna put this to the test. Note that we will compare only the image quality and not any other aspect. Since the ZV-1 is vastly superior with its face detection autofocus, excellent tracking, and optical stabilization.
Idris Elba, motherfucking Idris.
The Sony ZV-1 is a compact vlogging camera released in May 2020. It comes with a fixed 24-70 equivalent f1.8 to 2.8 Carl Zeiss power zoom lens with optical stabilization. It features a 1-inch stacked Exmor RX sensor. There's a built-in 2-stop ND filter. Unfortunately, it's micro USB chargeable, which is a bummer, and has no viewfinder. The camera captures gyro data, which is great for stabilization in post. While it's video-oriented, I've taken my share of pics with it, and it does reasonably well as a travel cam. It was replaced by the Sony ZV-1 II in June 2023. The successor comes with a wider 18-50 f1.8 to f4 lens without optical stabilization, relying only on electronic stabilization. It shares the exact same sensor as the first version. It's USB-C chargeable and uses the new Sony menus. Overall, the Sony ZV-1 II is an underwhelming update.
Move over then. That's fucking shit.
Which is why I'm sticking with my ZV-1 Mark I. To be honest, I don't know what Sony was thinking.
Bitch, I'm Idris Elba. I'm Idris Elba.
Some notes and disclaimers before we go into the comparisons. The X-Half takes 4x3 images, whereas the ZV-1 takes 3x2. All X-Half images are taken with a Fujifilm simulation and grain turned off because it looks terrible on this camera. Sony JPEGs are shot on the finest quality settings and produce 6 to 10 times larger file sizes than the Fujifilm. So it's only natural that they will be more artifact-free and rich in detail. Landscape orientation images taken with the X-Half were losslessly rotated with Google Photos. The ZV-1 is zoomed into 32mm for the exact same field of view.
Bitch, I'm Idris Elba. I'm Idris Elba. I'm Idris Elba. I'm Idris Elba.
Let's first test the performance wide open at the largest common aperture, which is f2.8. I made a clown show of this test by not framing the subject the same.
Fuck me, I'm amazing. Big Driss.
So I cropped both images to a square. There's no other way to put it. The Sony absolutely dominates the Fuji, producing a much cleaner and more detailed image. I find it hard to believe that Fuji outputs this kind of smudge fest at base ISO, but here we are.
Big drink it. Drink it.
Kinda tastes like coffee.
Exactly.
Seems like aggressive noise reduction is applied at base ISO for some reason, and the heavy JPEG compression is also evidently taking its toll. The result is bad even for a modern smartphone, to be honest. I redid the test properly a few days later because I couldn't believe the X-Half was so bad. This time I framed the pic the same with both cameras. The X-Half appears slightly more decent compared to the first attempt, but still, the amount of detail in the Sony files, be that because of the 3 times larger file size or the weaker denoising, is vastly superior. The X-Half image looks waxy and you can easily note the lack of definition in the eyes, skin and hair. You might notice that ISO was at 250 as opposed to base ISO 200, but I don't think that justifies just how much the IQ falls apart when you pixel peep.
Sorry, how did you get in here?
I'm Idris Elba. I goes where I goes.
Now let's compare image quality stopped down at f5.6 as well. This is equivalent to full frame f11 as far as depth of field is concerned, so it's a pretty safe default aperture to have during the day for snapshots. Here the X-Half is not as embarrassing but still lags behind the Sony in all aspects. The Sony resolves more fine detail, while the Fuji image quality is much more smudged and reminiscent of smartphone sensors of a few generations ago. I'd say the Fuji really behaves like a half-inch sensor, despite actually being a 1-inch sensor.
I'm sorry, are you Idris Elba?
Yes. Now fuck off.
Obviously, 1-inch sensors don't lend themselves to low light. But with the ZV-1, the occasional ISO 3200 image can be usable under conditions. Additionally, the ZV-1 also captures RAW, which can potentially clean up better with AI denoising apps. Let's now see how they fare at ISO 800, 1600 and 3200. Note that this comparison is flawed in the sense that these cameras use different ISO standards. Fuji uses SOS, Sony uses RAY. Fuji values would correspond to almost half of the Sony values. So by comparing them at the same numerical values, we're kinda handicapping the Sony. But let's see what happens anyway. The Fujifilm produces a radically warmer image, so I dropped white balance to get it closer to the Sony, which is cooler. Surprisingly, ISO 800 doesn't seem that much worse than 200 on the same camera. But between the two, the Sony again wins with crisper details and more fine-grained noise. The Fuji does retain some texture, but especially the edges are pretty terrible. Unsurprisingly, it only gets worse on from here. At ISO 1600, detail on the X-Half is hella soft and the image starts to look like a watercolor painting. On the Sony, detail is decent and the edges are still sharp. Finally, at ISO 3200, the Fuji falls apart even further. Texture is all but obliterated. The Sony is still usable, which is even more impressive if you consider that it would be around ISO 5000 in Fuji terms.
Stop! You could start a nuclear reaction or even create a black hole.
A black hole?
Let's have it.
Everyone say stop!
It's more or less confirmed that X-Half IQ is pretty shit.
Oi, oi. Science, is it? I'm all fucking over it. This is shit.
Fuji has severely crippled this camera by using a very high JPEG compression setting, plus there seems to be aggressive noise reduction all across the range. None of this is configurable, so we're unable to see if there's more image quality to unlock in the sensor and in the lens. The Sony ZV-1, on the other hand, shows what a 1-inch sensor is capable of when not hampered by the same design restrictions. Let's not break tradition and put them on a tier list. The X-Half is kinda subpar, so I'm classifying it as dodgy, whereas the ZV-1 is a proper camera even in 2026. If it had USB-C, I'd even give it a big dress ranking. Thanks for watching. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and click the bell button. And if you want to learn more about Fujifilm X-Half accessories, click the previous video.
Bitch, I'm Idris Elba. I'm Idris Elba. I'm Idris Elba. Motherfucking Idris Elba.